Hey, I will. Welcome back to my channel. I know it's been a while, but I wanted to start this year off with more videos. And the one that I want to talk about is Melyssa Ford. I know that it's been a couple of weeks since she promoted or did this video, but I really want to talk about why it's not a bad thing that she has proclaimed herself to be a cat lady. And we're going to go through the videos. I'm going to stop it a couple times, but I definitely want you to watch the whole video, and I'm going to put it in the description box below. But before we get started, this channel is based on how feminism has destroyed a lot of our marriages, has destroyed relationships, and there is a huge disconnect on what feminism is and what the intent was. But before we get started, please like this video and subscribe to my channel. Let's get started.
And how does it make any sense that we've turned our country over to people who don't really have a direct stake in it?
At first, I was offended. And then when I thought about it, I really just had to laugh because never been married, childless cat ladies. Honestly, that sounds like a dream come true to me. I don't know. Like solitude, my own choices, and animals that love me. Oh my God, somebody, call the cops. This sounds awful. But anyways, I know that I'm not the only one that felt that their life choices were put under attack. So this episode is called I Am 48, I Am Child Free, and I've never been married. And guess what? That's okay. I never made it down the aisle, but I have been engaged in the past. How many engagements? I would say 2.5. Let's start with the 0.5 since that was the first one. I was involved with a man who loved me. He was good looking, he was tall, he was charismatic, gregarious. Everybody loved him. My mom loved him, my sister loved him, my niece loved him, my friends loved him. Everybody loved him. But there was something inside of me that just said, this is not perfect. It's the furthest thing from perfect. He would say things like, nobody's ever going to love you the way that I love you. And I believed him. I wrestled with this.
I want to stop there. The first thing she talked about was he was not perfect. And we all know that no relationship is perfect. And that's just the first thing I noticed. She kept saying that it just wasn't perfect.
This internal sense of guilt. I wrestled with the guilt of honestly wanting to be free, honestly wanting to live my life and to date and to experience other men.
Okay, so I had to stop here where she said she wanted to experience other men. She really wanted to date, even though she thought she found a really good guy. And that is something that we talk about, that young women think that exploring a whole bunch of guys is going to make them somehow, find what it is they're looking for. And most likely it doesn't, because all it does is make a lot of women become not being able to pair bond because they've been with so many different men. So let's continue.
And to experience other things and other places. I just wanted to live my life. I had moved to New York from Toronto, a totally different country, with $25, 2 suitcases, and a one-way ticket. I didn't have permission from my country to leave. I didn't have permission from this country to be here. And I was making things happen for myself at a very, very rapid pace. And so to find myself inside of a relationship that felt so stifling at this very young age and not having the vocabulary to speak up for myself and articulate that somebody who loves you would not say those things to you. They wouldn't say that nobody will ever love you the way that I love you, because that indicates that there's a part of me that's broken or there's a part of me that's unlovable. But I didn't know how to articulate this. Sometimes they didn't even get the marriage. They just got the kids, and they inherited a whole lot of struggle and strife. And it's not to say that their choices are better or worse than the choices that I made. These are just choices. But for us women, I feel like our choices oftentimes have never really, really belonged to us. And when we have tried to exert our sense of independence, we are shamed for it. At this point, let me go on to the second engagement. So I'm 28 years old and I have left the previous relationship, the point five, and I have met this man who, the minute I saw him, I knew I was going to be with him. He just was it. I don't know how to describe it. And the second I heard his voice, I said, I'm going to marry this man. I don't know what it was.
Okay, so do you notice how she said the second she saw this man that she knew she was going to marry him or want to be with him and heard his voice? Nothing about his character, nothing about who he was as a person, but who she saw what he looked like, and that was enough for her to say, "Oh yeah, he's it." That's a problem.
Was like, it just, he had this Louisiana drawl. It's my favorite Southern accent. He was huge, like 6'1", 246 pounds of hulking muscle. He had skin the color of like red clay. He had this thick neck, big round head. He had this crooked tooth that drove me wild. His flaws were like manna from heaven for me. And I loved his dirty draws, and I could just sleep in his armpit right after he'd played a game of like pickup basketball. That is how much I loved this man. And I was perturbed by, an interaction with a strange man at a party that I had been at. He'd said something vile to me and it hurt my feelings. And all I wanted was to be comforted. And so I went back to my hotel room and I called my boyfriend and I just asked him to just tell me that he thought that I was beautiful and that he loved me. And he didn't do that. He just pressured me to tell him what happened. Why are you asking me to do this? And so I told him what happened, and he responded by saying, why would I want to date such a weak bitch that would be that offended by what some strange guy has to say to her? There's just no way that he just said that to me. I'm sorry, what? And he said, you heard me. And I said, I'm really confused right now. And he was like, I'm sure you are. I felt like I was talking to a stranger. There's no way that this was the person that I had just spent the last 6 months with, completely absorbed with, and in the throes of like love and ecstasy with. And I said, I'm glad that I'm finding out who you really actually are now rather than later. He said, yeah, I'm sure you are. Click. And hung up the phone on me. I cried myself to sleep that night. And the next day I had to cover a ladies' luncheon, the wives of the NBA. And so I had to be perfect and pretty. And I had to act like the man of my dreams had not just told me to basically go F myself. And so while I was getting ready, a large bouquet of flowers was delivered. My makeup artist said, Mel, you should read the card. And it said, you are beautiful to me and I love you. And I'm sorry. And then his name. I burst into tears. It just flew out of my face. So basically my whole beat face just melted. And I called him and I said, I received your flowers. And he said, I am so sorry. And I told him, I'm going to forgive you because I love you. But you can't ever speak to me like that ever again. He's like, I promise I won't. So whenever people wonder, how do people end up in abusive relationships and why do you stay? The reasons are aplenty, but I will start by saying that that is not the way that it begins. It begins with love bombing.
So the first thing, no one deserves to be in an abusive, toxic relationship. And I'm glad she got out of it. She didn't marry him. But what I do want to say, I want to talk about, do you notice how she talked about how attractive he was? How tall he was, what he looked like. And a lot of women have a tendency to base the value of a man on what he looks like and how tall he is. And some people even do it based on how much money they make. That is, to me, that's not what you should be looking for. It should be someone's character. It should be someone's heart, and how they're able to love you, is through patience, kindness, and um, um, communication. So yeah, so I just definitely want to talk about that, a part of the video. So let's continue.
It begins with flowers, candy, gifts, and the wonderful sex and the cuddles and the pillow talk. And this is how it begins. And it can last for a lengthy amount of time before that person really shows up. The true version of themselves shows up. And by that point, you start to bargain with yourself and they start to apologize. And their apologies are usually other than, I was addicted to him. Was working at BET at the time when we were dating. And more than once, observations were made about bruises on my body and how skinny I was getting, obviously from the stress. And people had voiced concern for me, but I just shooed them away. We tussle. It's fine. No problem. But there really was a reason for concern. I stayed through it all and accepted the marriage proposal. The final straw for me was his reaction to finding out that my mom was ill. I had gotten a phone call while I was out with him and his family, and he was acting up as per usual. And I got a phone call from my aunt telling me that my mom had been rushed to the hospital. I was in Texas. So, in order for me to rush home to see my mom, I would have to leave Texas, go home to New York, pick up my passport, and then go to Canada. And when I told him what was going on, obviously I was looking for empathy and sympathy and compassion, and that was not what I got. It was on this day that I finally could see the forest for the trees. If I stayed in this relationship, in 10 years, I would have that white picket fence, and I would have the 2 kids, and I would be an abused woman, hiding her bruises and her broken bones and her scars from her family and her friends and society at large, because I was a forward facing media personality / model. My mom's sickness was, strangely enough, a blessing in disguise. And that relationship came to an end. And that was the first full engagement. So 1.5. So that's where we are right now.
Any advice for any beautiful women out there?
Take a sip of wine. I was raised as an only child. My father was a Rolling Stone, and I am the youngest of 11. But I am my mother's only child, and I was raised in a 2-parent household, just me on my own. I used to wish constantly for a brother and a sister or a twin. It was around 6 when I figured out the twin thing was not going to happen. But I really wanted a brother or a sister because I was lonely, and apologized to me. I think that that's something that parents really miss the mark on a lot of the time. I just did not feel that urge like other women have to have children. And it is definitely intertwined with what I witnessed from a very early age as to my parents and their dysfunction. I ended up getting an IUD implanted in my uterus. And when I say that sucker was Fort Knox, nothing was getting through that mofo. And it stayed in so long that it ultimately made the decision for me. But yet again, It's not like I felt any source of pressure. Which leads me to the last engagement when I was approximately 36, 37 years old. And I'll be honest, I thought that I was in love with this man, but I wasn't. What I was traumatized from an experience that had happened to me on a cruise ship where I was almost raped. And I could not be in the room alone with my own shadow. I was so traumatized by what had happened to me that when this man appeared, he was offering safety and security. He was physically huge, but he also came with a very secure lifestyle and a lot of security. And so I felt safe. And that's the only thing I was looking for. I was looking for safety. And so I lied to myself. And it was very easy to do that, to just dive in head first, forget the rocks below. And during the process of this relationship, I started to realize that I was losing myself completely and totally. Friends had started to notice, Mel, you're paying a lot of attention to his career, but what are you doing about yours? And I didn't want to hear it. I actually did not want to even hear my own name. I didn't know what it meant to be Melyssa Ford anymore. I had no clue. The sound of my own name gave me goosebumps, and not in the best way. I was having a massive identity crisis. And so when he proposed, he didn't even get the full words out before I said yes, because I was running from myself. I was running from my truth. I was running from the healing journey that was on the horizon. I was running and I was trying to put the blinders on. But there was always that like internal sense of that steel core of resilience and tenacity inside of me that said, Melyssa, this is not your truth. This is not your path. This is not it. And as scary as it was to keep trying to align myself with my internal compass, obviously, you make all these decisions, but it's got to bring you back pointing due north, which leads me to where I am now, 48, child-free, and never been married. And honestly, with zero regrets.
Did you ever decide to freeze your eggs?
Yeah, the freezing eggs conversation came up around mid 30s amongst myself and my girlfriends. It became something that just was a very trendy conversation to have. But if you know anything about freezing eggs, first of all, it's extraordinarily cost prohibitive. I was in the entertainment industry, and this is
So I'm going to cut the video off there. And again, like I said, I put the entire video in the description box, so you definitely can take a look at it. But I want to touch on some things that I think is really, really important. The first thing is, I think it's great that she knows that she doesn't want to be a mother. I think that she could have married someone and divorced them and had children and really didn't want to be that mother that she's supposed to be, because she said early on that she wanted to have a career, and she also said that she was dating multiple people. So she really didn't want to be a committed monogamous mother and wife. And I commend her for telling the truth, because a lot of women say they want two different things and they can't have everything or both. And so yes, she is a proud cat lady because the cat loves her, and I don't want to shame anyone for the choices that they're made. Now, the problem is there are too many women who believe what she believed. You know, it would be different if it was a small percentage of women, especially in America, that said, no, I don't want to be a mother. No, I don't want to be a wife. It's too many. And then the other problem is a lot of women want to have fun in their 20s and 30s, and then later on in life they want to get married and have children. And even the fact that they've had children, early on with the wrong person, but then when they're in their 30s and 40s, they want someone else to, you know, be the father figure for their children. They should have been thinking about that in their prime. And so that's the other side of it. She still looks good, but I think that for her, it's the right choice because she could have ruined so many lives with the mentality that she has if she were to marry someone and have children. So I am glad that she knew early on that she wouldn't be the best person to be a wife or a mother. So that is what I think I got from it. I did get that a lot of young women look up to her because they think that they want the best of both worlds, where they can go out here and do anything they want to in their 20s, do whatever, have how many kids they want to, but then in their 30s is when they're mature and they were like, oh no, I don't want to have fun now, I want to settle down. But that's the problem. A lot of men are not settling down with an already made family. So I think that the discussion is needed more for why so many women are not wanting to get married, and then the ones that do, it's too late. They should have been making that decision, not saying to get married at 18, but they should have been preparing themselves to get married, to someone in their early 20s at the best time to find your husband. So that's my video. I wanted to look at it in a different perspective versus, everyone shaming her and saying that she's a horrible feminist and all that stuff. But, I am glad she told her truth, and I'm glad that she didn't get married because then she wouldn't have, taken someone to court and had kids and really didn't want to. So anyway, I would love to hear what you think. Please like this video, subscribe to my channel. Until next time, I will see you later. Bye.